Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the 3-Gun Show, your source for technique, strategy, and match recon, brought to you by Armalite Rifles, LAG Tactical, and Breda Shotguns. I'm your host, Dave Hartman. This edition of the 3-Gun Show, we talk with Tina Martin about self-defense as a road into competitive shooting and breaking down your shooting season into specific goals. This podcast is brought to you by Breda USA, Italian shotguns that are the best in the world. And this is a shotgun tech tip from Team Breda.
Hey, this is Dave Hartman for the 3-Gun Show, and we have Josh Tarrant of Team Breda, and he's here with a shotgun tech tip for you. Josh, what do you got?
Today we're going to talk about shotgun stance. Stance is incredibly important to be able to shoot a shotgun well, manage recoil. So first up, we're going to start at the feet. You want your feet wider than shoulder width apart. If you're right-handed, you want your left leg further forward. You want about 75% of your weight on your left leg, weight over the balls of your feet. You want to have a nice forward lean of your spine. Shoulder the shotgun, roll your shoulder forward to cradle. And that'll help you ride the recoil and get back on target faster.
That's another shotgun tech tip with Josh Tarrant from Team Breda. Thanks, Josh.
Check out Breda's B12i 3-gun ready inertia-driven shotgun at BredaUSA.com. That's BREDA. This podcast is brought to you by LAG Tactical. I've been using LAG gear for 3 years now, and I just got an upgrade into their new for 2018 MCS mag pouches. MCS stands for Modular Carry System and is a two-piece design that fits most double-stack 9 and 40 mags and most AR mags. That means I can loan gear to someone in need on the range, even if we're shooting different guns. I've been using these pouches for many matches now, and they've been great. I like that you can choose the retention based on what is required by the stage, Speed Demon or locked in tight. I've been shooting the low-cut Supernova holster as well, and it has been a dream. They make it in a mid and high cut too if you're into that, but I'm digging the low cut. Super fast draws and plenty of retention when you need it. Check them out, lagtactical.com, and use code 3GS in all caps to save yourself 10% when placing an order. Hey everybody, and welcome to the 3-Gun Show. As I record this, I just attended the Jeff Kirkwall Memorial 3-Gun match in Forest Lake, Minnesota at the Forest Lake Sportsman's Club, and this match was absolutely amazing. Keep a lookout for the replay of the shoot-off show that we did at the match, but in the meantime, here's a spoiler. We raised $20,000 for the Task Force Dagger Foundation. The goal was $15,000, and the match far exceeded that expectation, but we're not done. We're still raffling off a JP rifle and a Vortex Optics Viper PST 1-6, and we're doing that online via Practice Score. There's a link in the show notes at 3gunshow.com/episode 199. Entries are $20, and buy as many as you like because the money goes directly to the Task Force Dagger Foundation, directly into their bank account. And the drawing for that is going to be August 1st, and we'll pick one lucky winner. So, like I said, enter as many times as you want because the money goes to a good cause. Next up on the schedule will be TriggerCon in Washington. I'm going to be there working the Vortex Optics booth with some amazing people as usual. If you're going, come say hey. It's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to TriggerCon. This is my first one, but everything I've heard seems like it's going to be a good one. So if you're in the Washington area, come check it out. Now on to the show. Tina Martin is on the podcast this week, and although I had met Tina a few times before, I got the opportunity to talk with her at the 2017 Girl in the Gun Fall Fest. Tina had a pretty amazing story to tell about her background in natural sciences and how she uses that training in her pursuit of competitive shooting. So I knew I had to have her on the podcast. Tina is a firearms instructor and also teaches bushcraft. So if after listening to this podcast, you're interested in more instruction, you can find a link to her website where you can sign up for her classes in the show notes at 3gunshow.com/episode 199. So enjoy this show with Tina Martin.
Tina, welcome to the 3-Gun Show.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
I'm excited to have you. This is going to be cool. I'm excited to learn about
your background a little more and share it with the audience here, because I got a little sneak peek when we were at a Girl and a Gun Fall Fest last year, and I think you have a really interesting story that's going to be fun to unwrap.
Oh, thank you. Well, I am an eclectic mix of things.
Well, the Three Gun Show usually starts with a little bit about you when you're not shooting, because we're going to dive deep into like your three gun stuff, your education, your training, your PRS shooting as well. So what does Tina do when she's not on the range?
Well, I have 3 little kids I manage. So I'm mostly a full-time mom. I have a 7-year-old girl and then 2 boys who are 9 and 11. And then I'm also doing firearms instruction, building a business there in bushcraft instruction. So I'm taking care of them, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, piano lessons. I do a lot of things outdoors. I'm a runner. So we'll see probably some running and gunning stuff here coming soon out of me.
Oh, nice. Well,
Yeah.
hey, since you brought it up, October 13th, I'm holding a run and gun here in Colorado.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's going to be a 3-gun run and gun obstacle race. So we've got
Ooh.
we've got like 10 sweet obstacles and 7 stages that we're planning. So put that on your calendar.
On my calendar. Boy, already just filling up my calendar, Dave.
I know. Well, so you mentioned teaching bushcraft and then the Cub Scouts as well. So when that stuff comes up in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, do they look at you like, hey, Tina, come over here?
It's funny. So as soon as I became involved in Cub Scouts with my boys, they quickly realized what I do a lot with the shooting and stuff. And so the next thing I know, I was being enrolled in a range officer safety class for BB guns. And I'm a range officer, and I go out and essentially when they have their camps, I'm certified to come in and be the range officer for the BB section of the camp. And so then me and we've got other den leaders that are out there, and it ends up boiling down to, I bet you I can shoot my Red Ryder better than your Red Ryder. So we have, and then, my little daughter who kind of pals around Cub Scouts is changing and it's very family oriented, so she'll come up and then she'll be like, I can shoot better than all of you, and she'll like bullseye that Red Ryder.
Yes.
All the other guys are like, oh man. so it's a lot of fun. It's a good community of people, just like the shooting community. So.
Yeah, very cool. So it sounds like you've got a little bit of a competitive streak. Does that come out a lot?
No. What would ever make you think that? Yes, I think competition in general makes people, it encourages people to do better. And so I think as long as everybody's, at the end of the day, you're really competing with yourself. But it's fun to go out there and compete against others and create. I'm a goal-minded individual. I set goals for the year and for short-term goals for me to accomplish, and it's be able to go out there and do that with other people that you enjoy is part of the fun and the culture within the shooting community. So,
What's an example of some goals that you've set for yourself this year?
So I won't mention names, but I do have like a list.
Oh, you got a hit list? Nice.
I have a list of people that I would like to, move past the scoreboard. I think all of us kind of friendlily have one of those because I know where their skill set is, and they're growing, and so am I. So if I can surpass them, then that means I'm accomplishing. But then I have little like goals, like, hey, I want to be able to shoot my plate rack from holster under a certain second. So I have a book of where I'm keeping track of how fast can I shoot the plate rack clean, and I want to be able to get to this. So if I'm doing it in 5 seconds, can I get it down within a month or two down to like 4.5 seconds? So I have these little kind of goals that I start to push, and because initially when I started shooting, I didn't kind of really get that I needed to push myself hard on the training side and not at the match. Really, you should be kind of running at 95% or so at the match, not full throttle.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I've kind of grown through, and I'm like, okay, I want to be able to shoot offhand rifle, plate rack in this time, clean. So just those little goals. And then percentages. Like all of us, when I first started, I was down at the bottom. And so the first goal was to get into the top of the bottom third, and then 50%. And then this year I set a goal of I wanted to be able to attain 2 high ladies from 2 major matches. And so, still working, trying to make those things happen. So
very cool. So I like those goals. So how do you look at goal setting? Like where do these challenges come from? Like, do you just pull them out of the air?
No. I try to pull the small term goals out of skill sets that we use and whatever, whether it's PRS or 3-gun. So we have certain things that we pretty much see at every single match. So it's encouraged me to be practicing those things on a regular basis. And so it's good to build those goals off of those. And then I think some of my goals are, they may be just goals for me because they make me feel like I'm accomplishing certain things. So, I think it's kind of both things. It's based off a skill set, and it's just based off my own personal wants.
I gotcha.
So,
Now, do you mentioned your daughter seems like she's got maybe mom's a little competitive streak as well?
Yeah, she competes with her older brothers all the time.
Yeah.
Pretty much. If her brothers can do it, she's going to be out there in a pink tutu, getting muddy up to the knees, doing it herself.
Do you encourage your kids to make goals as well?
I do. We do this a lot. A great example is my middle son. At the beginning of the school year, it seemed like he was struggling with school. And I told him, after his first semester, he had made A and B honor roll, but he wasn't happy with that. He wanted principal's list. He wanted straight A's, just like his brother ahead of him had done. And I said, son, the only way to do this is if you've got to put the work in. And it took him 2 more semesters. But this last semester, he reached principal's list. And the pride of that achievement is there's nothing better than watching your children achieve a goal that they've set. And it took them all year, and it took hard work and practice. And that's why I think goal setting, especially for children, is a really important thing, because we're going to have these kind of challenges all through life.
Yeah.
So set something out. I put Post-it notes on my mirror reminding me what those goals are. That if there's something really pending I'm trying to really focus on, then I have a little sticky note every morning. I wake up, wash my face, and I look at my sticky note.
Nice. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that, because 2 semesters is like forever in the mind of a 9-year-old.
For a 7-year-old, yeah.
Or 7-year-old, excuse me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. He's 9. Yeah. Gosh,
oh, okay.
He's 9. He just turned 9. So
yeah. So
but yeah, it is. And he had days of tears on the table because for whatever reason in our kids' school, 3rd grade is like a real hard homework year. It's where they get pounded with homework. So he was really struggling with that. And he's like, well, my brother and sister don't have this much. And I'm like, well, son, that's kind of how life is. People around you aren't going to have the same obstacles that you have.
Yeah, that's truth. That is very much truth. It's all in how you deal with them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. So, Tina, when did shooting come on your radar?
Oh, so 15 years ago was the first time I picked up a firearm and shot one. It was a Glock 19. And at the time, I was a field scientist and field ecologist. And I did, and so when you're a field scientist, you're out in the woods doing research, usually in a remote place because you're looking for animals and plants. And I was a plant biologist. And so I'm kind of out in the woods by myself on a pretty regular basis. And then at the same time, I did a lot of rock climbing and hiking. So again, pretty much every aspect of my life, I was out in the woods by myself with a small group of people. And you become very self-aware of what you are capable and incapable of dealing with. And so I became aware that I needed to figure out some sort of strategy to protect myself, and not only just against humans, but against animals, bears, anything like that you could come up against. And at the same time, and I'll kind of hit this because I think we'll eventually get into it too, at the same time, that was where the skill set for bushcraft and things like that started to play into too. Well, started at the same time. So I reached out and found a friend who kind of take me out to the range, which ended up being like at his grandmother's house. And I shot my first gun, and I was, just like every person, just shaking and scared, like, oh my God, oh my God. And then boom, and I hit that center of the shooting seat, and I was like, oh, I like that. It kind of went to town with the rest of the mag because the fear part for me had gone. I was like, oh, I can do this. And so it started off initially just me, kind of learning, being able to manipulate a handgun, basic plinking, and then evolved into more self-defense initially. And then that kind of grew. I ended up in Texas, and they had IDPA matches. And that's kind of like, the gateway competition anyways for a lot of people. And so I went to the IDPA matches. I had my holster and the Glock, and I put my mag pouches in my back pocket, or my magazines in my back pocket, and kind of, and learned how to do some small movements and shooting and cover and typical things that you kind of expect in a more self-defense situation. And that grew. And so that was the first time I experienced that, oh, you think you're shit hot, and then you are at the bottom of the competition list, and you're like, oh, I suck. So I was like, all right, well, I want to at least beat one person by the next time I go. And that's where that regimen started. I started practicing, and then I grew out of IPA, went to USPSA. And then at that time, I was in the period of my life of having children. And so I kind of calmed down a bit for competition. For a while I had them, and they were little, so they weren't being exposed to lead and things like that. And then I guess it's about 5 years ago, my friend Heather Miller, she was very active in 3-gun, and still is, but she was telling me about these 3-gun matches and stuff, and I'm like, I really liked pistol. So she kind of got me started, and she went with me to my first major, which was the very first ladies 3-gun match. Was that 4 or 5 years ago? That was in Atlanta, and that was my first major match.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay, I want to talk about that first 3-gun match, but let's back up to like your first IDPA match. You end up at the bottom of the list. You're like, oh, I thought I was good. I kind of suck a little bit. Why go shoot that second match? Like, what was it about the competition that hooked you in to think like, oh, I need to progress in this?
Well, I think, I see all of this stuff as a skill set. And I think that for me, I kind of always joke, I say I have my little toolbox of tools. And I want that toolbox to be ready. And so for me, it was a rude awakening of where my skill set was, because when I went to the range and I just shot at a perfectly still target in front of it, I was fantastic. I could shoot very accurately. But then when I realized that stress, essentially the timer at that time, the beep, really didn't push me to where I'd never been before. And so my own kind of who I am is part of it. I was like, well, I'm not happy with that. I'm not okay with that. And so I have a little bit of a hashtag that I kind of jokingly tell people, I embrace the suck. And that was me embracing the suck. Okay, you suck at this. How can I get better? Because that situation was more like of what I would experience if somebody was to attack me, or I needed to protect my kids, because there were some stressors involved. So I knew I needed to get better. And that was a way for me to be able to do it, and also monitor my progression. Be able to see how well I'm doing from month to month. Because generally at local matches, we shoot with the same people.
Yeah.
So you get a good indication of how well you're progressing.
Well, and IDPA has like their classification system too, right? So if you can advance in that, then that means you're progressing as an individual as well.
Exactly.
Did you ever get classified in IDPA?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't remember ever doing it, to be honest. I remember shooting classifiers, but I don't think I ever, like, if I did, like, it's been so long ago, I just don't remember. But I don't remember actually. I remember in USPSA, like, starting to look at those classifiers and actually practicing classifiers. But initially, I think I was just so new to competitive shooting, I didn't even really realize what I needed to do to work towards. Me, it was just where my name was on that lineup.
I gotcha. All right, so your first 3-gun match was, I don't remember what it was called. It was like Brownells.
It was a Brownells ladies.
Lady 3-gun, is that right?
Lady 3-gun, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It was Lady 3-gun.
So first of all, what made you sign up for that match? Did it take coaxing? Was there any sort of hesitation, or were you all in? And then what was the...
This is the crazy part of me, is I really don't have any problem, like, taking both feet and jumping. It's really probably not a great quality at the end of the day, but like, if something seems like I really want to go out there and try it and do it, like, I'm like all in. Like, oh, let's try. Let's do it. So yeah, I was able to. I had a rifle. I had I still have it. It's a 1187 Remington. Like, I mean, it was just this. I called it Woody because it was a wood shotgun.
Nice.
Put an extension on it and rolled. Didn't even know how to really twin load or anything. Like, I was literally one by one shoving them into the shotgun. I looked at video of it the other day from that match. I'm like, holy cow, that's a huge leap.
Yeah, no kidding.
Back. So, I wanted to learn. I thought it looked fun and exciting. I mean, a whole bunch of women doing it. I'm like, well, this is fantastic. Let me learn. Not only can I learn on pistol, I can become more skilled in rifle and shotgun. So.
That's cool. So you went to that first match, had a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did actually fairly well too, which was surprising.
Well, you had already had USPSA and IDPA competition experience, right? So you had some sort of sense of breaking down stages. I
did, and then Heather had given me some advice, and so I had quite a few people around me, kind of helping me and coaching me. It was just honestly what probably was like, okay, how do I load this shotgun? Because that was the part that took time to figure out.
Yeah.
Because I had already done some carbine work. I had taken actually some carbine courses out in Texas through Rifles Only. So I already had some good experience of movement with a carbine and pistol. So.
Gotcha. So what did you think of the shotgun the first time you picked it up and shot a match with it?
It was kind of like, wow, all right. I can see why. I can see why people don't ever make the leap from 2-gun to 3-gun. I think the shotgun sometimes can be, even for grown men, can be, just unwieldy at first if you're not used to it. Especially, I mean, it's not like, because I've shot trap and skeet, done that before, and that wasn't a big deal. But I think repetitively shooting a shotgun at, essentially we're shooting it like a rifle many times, it is a taxing. So at first I definitely was like, oh, okay. And then, I had the sore shoulder like most new shotgun shooters do to 3-gun. And it was just like, okay, well, and I took my time progressing. I shot a heavier shotgun for a while to eat the recoil up so it didn't transfer to me. And then finally learned how to manage one and now have an inertia gun. So
nice.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, so what are your thoughts on the shotgun now?
Oh, I love it. It's fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I'm that's kind of one of my short-term goals now is like, I recently got to do one of the shoot-offs at the 3-Gun Nation South Regional.
Uh-huh.
And literally, like, was standing there, and Dan Horner was over by me, and I'm like, Dan, I've never done this before. Do you got any pointers?
What does he know?
I mean, he's only like an expert. Might as well just go to the top, right?
Yeah.
And he gave me some fantastic advice, and I went out there, and it was funny because for me, guns, like, initially when you start shooting them, there's the whirlwind of shooting the gun. But then once you get past that, you start to actually feel how the gun operates and how it moves and stuff like that. And I finally gotten to where a shotgun where I can actually, on my Brita, I can feel when it starts getting down to those last 3 shells.
Oh, really?
Like the recoil starts feeling different, and it's probably the weight of the gun shifts. There's a lot of things, and the science part of me is constantly trying to figure out what parts are going on and why is it doing that, and how can I kind of figure that out, because it helps me understand the gun better. But I go up there and it's this array of clays that I've got to shoot accurately and as fast as possible to get on to the next stage. And for me, I kind of feel like for a while the shotgun's been my weaker gun. But I went up there and was like, did what Dan told me, did what I was supposed to do behind the gun. And that really spurred on this excitement for me, because I went to town and I pushed myself and I'm like, oh man, I want to be able to do this faster and faster. And that's what I've been doing at home. I have clays set up and I try to push through them as fast as possible as my next little skill set, because I have that time under pressure of what I did it in, and now I want to push harder. So the next time I have one of those shoot-offs, I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm going to be like, oh, I've done this. I'm good to go.
I love that attitude. Do you remember what Dan told you that helped you out in that moment?
Dan, and I can't remember all the details because I was in that whirlwind. I need to sit down with him again and ask him what he told me. But really what he told me was just focus on that gun and that target one at a time. Like, essentially push everything else that you can out and focus on the job at hand, which is, it's kind of obvious advice, but I had one on the second time I did it. I had one of the rifle plate racks that essentially was my demise, and I was listening to what he was telling me all the way to that last plate, and then it's like, my brain turned off.
Like, I gotta leave here and go to the next gun.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about going to the next gun and not that target.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it's simple advice, but spot on. So
it's always the simplest advice is the hardest to take too, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's like you want to smack yourself. You're like, why didn't I listen to that?
All right, so we talked about your first 3-gun experience, and then you pretty much dove in after that. What was your first major match experience like outside of a ladies only match? What were the differences that you saw between the two?
Well, and I guess that, initially I was a little worried about, because even 4 or 5 years ago, there wasn't nearly as many female 3-gunners as there is now. Like, we're all popping out of the woodworks now.
Yeah.
We're all over this.
But even now, it's such a small percentage of most matches I go to. It's
and it really depends on where you are in the country, because it seems like in the Southeast we've got like a ladies invasion group.
Yeah.
Come in and take over whole squads. So at the Task Force Dagger match that just happened last weekend, I think we had 15 ladies, which is a good number of ladies considering.
Yeah, for sure.
It's still, there's 270 shooters, so 15 ladies really isn't that much. But we kind of grouped together to kind of help each other out. But I did have that initial feeling as a female shooter, like, oh, there's all these guys here, and I'm not that great. I'm new at this, but I try to just push that away, because I try to think of myself, and when anything I do that's new, I go, all these people have had the same experience you've had. You've been the first person up, new, you've never done this before. Just get up there and do the best you can. And that's what I did. And I wasn't, I think sometimes when you're scared and new, you might put off like the wrong kind of vibe. And I've seen, sometimes I've seen female shooters do that, and they're a bit standoffish because they're new and they're worried how well they're going to be viewed by the other shooters. And instead, I think it's best just to relax. There's going to be a lot of people who want to help you. If you want to take their advice, you can take their advice. If you don't, you can say, oh, thank you, and then you just move on. And And that's, I started really in the Tar Heel, when Tar Heel 3-gun was active. That was the group of shooters that I got to shoot with on a monthly basis. And, I was really lucky because I got to shoot with a great bunch of people, but then I also got to shoot with a lot of high-level shooters early on.
Right.
And so I got to see, what a lot of advanced techniques, which I still haven't figured all out yet. But it was, a good group of people that were willing to help, but didn't overstep in their help too. Like
Right.
I had one stage where I cried. I remember it was Jeff Barkwin was the RO, and I mistakenly put my barrel on the prop, and so my rifle was shooting high, and I didn't shoot any of the long range targets. And so I literally was stomped off, all pissed off at myself, and then went back to my car and I cried. And then I put my gun in there, and then Jeff waited. He watched me do all that, and he waited until I calmed down, and he's like, "Can I offer you some advice?" Apparently Jeff is happily married because he understands how to work with women. But he was, told me what I was doing, which I had no idea at the point, and I've never made that mistake again.
Yeah. Yeah. I struggle with that one because I've done that one several times before, but it's only because I've done it before that I don't do it now. So when I see
learn the hard way.
yeah, when I see people doing that at a club match, I struggle with well, do I help them out in the moment or do I let it suck hard enough that they never do that again?
Yeah, it's a hard balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I mean, because you can only be told what the or how hot the pot is so many times before you just want to touch it yourself, I guess.
Yeah, and some, and I think too, people aren't always ready to take the advice when you're ready to give it, and finding that optimal time is kind of critical as somebody who's helping other shooters get better.
That is an amazing point right there. So you're fast forwarding a little bit here. You're an educator as well. You teach people to shoot. You've taught some higher level marksmanship classes and ballistics classes for a girl and a gun. So how do you meet someone where they're at? How do you evaluate each student?
Well, I always take them through some sort of proficiency drill because I need to find what their baseline is. And then for me, I always feel like when I take a class, I want to at least have one golden nugget from that class. And that's a piece of information that really is kind of one of those light bulb moments. And I don't have to have more than one light bulb moment per class. I will happily pay somebody a couple $100s for a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Because it's usually one of those things you realize that you've been doing for a long time. You're like, oh, and it will make you make a leap in your abilities or your skill. So I try not to overwhelm, especially newer shooters. You'll see a whole bunch of things that they need to change, and it would help them immensely. But that doesn't mean that they're mentally ready to do it.
Right.
So that's kind of I think we've talked about this before, Dave. I'm kind of a person who really watches a lot of what's going on, the actual expressions of somebody, their body language and those things. And a lot of that tells me how fast they can intake information. If they're struggling with me giving them one or two instructions, there's no point in me overwhelming them with a whole bunch. So I always establish a baseline, and then I start to feel how fast that they can take in information. And in an instruction, I usually only give them one piece at a time, and we go from there. And some people aren't, and you may touch upon something that somebody else has taught them, and they're not willing to let go of that information yet. You just have to, as an instructor, go, all right, I'm going to teach you this. If you don't do it right now, that's all right. Maybe a few months down the road, I've planted a seed, and that seed will grow. So I'm really just there planting a bunch of seeds, hoping that the knowledge grows in them.
I like that analogy. Yeah, that's really cool. So overwhelm is definitely a thing, especially when you're talking about 3-gun and maybe someone's first club match or someone's first experience. And I find a lot of times, not everyone's like Jeff Barkwin, right? So
right.
There's people when unload should clear, you turn around before you can even go and cry at your car. you're getting 35, like, hey, you need to reverse kneel. Hey, your barrel was touching this. Hey, you're doing this. You really should replace that scope. It's like, whoa, guys.
Like, shut up.
Chill out.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times I think we should assign someone like a squad buddy, and like, hey, this person is only going to take instruction from Tina during this match because everything else that we just throw at this person is going to overwhelm them. So let's let them get all their information from one source. What do you think about that?
I think that's a fantastic idea. There's a local match that's around here to me that's a Zombie Shooters Association, the ZSA, and that's actually something that I've seen them do. Our population of shooters that have been doing it for a long time will identify new shooters, and they'll essentially squad with them and ride with them along the way and help them through each thing, and everybody else kind of stands back and lets them do it. That way they're not getting 40,000 people exactly barking at them what they should be doing. They can listen to one person and one person only. And then, us as shooters, if we see something that maybe that the mentor isn't bringing up, you can bring it up to the mentor and not to the actual new shooter.
Right.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I always tell new shooters, like, hey, bring a pad if you can. Like, write this stuff down, because just like Daniel Horner, I can't quite remember everything he told me because I was overwhelmed at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your heart's beating fast. You got the cocktail going of all the endorphins and everything.
Oh, yeah. And it's a beautiful cocktail. I really wish they could figure out how to bottle it, but it's but it doesn't exactly keep memories really well.
Yeah, the cocktail is interesting. So I was thinking on the ride home yesterday, because I mentioned I have a 2-hour ride to the range. So usually I have a 2-hour ride home. So I was on my ride home. I was trying to think about, like, what is it that drives me to play this game? Like, what was it about that first match? Because, like, I can picture the first stage I shot in my head, and that was like 2011. But I don't consider myself a competitive person. Although my actions sometimes prove otherwise, but
a closet competitor.
I think so. I think so. But for me, the conclusion that I came to yesterday was it's the cocktail. It's the juice. It's the
adrenaline junkie party.
Yeah, seriously. Like I'll often let out a holler after a stage or something like that, and for me, it is like the heart beating fast, the adrenaline pumping through your veins, the hand shaking. Like that's what it is for me. That's what I like about it.
It's invigorating. It's almost like life juice just pouring through you. I agree. I definitely enjoy it very much. And I mean, I've done a lot of other things that with like rock climbing and stuff like that gives you the same kind of rush. And so I think there's something that's tied into people that have a competition nature to them, and then there's adrenaline junkies that are seeking that kind of natural endorphin high. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think that definitely nails it for me. Like I can recall obstacle racing. I've done several dozen Spartan races and Tough Mudders and Warrior Dashes and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember the ride home, or not the ride home. It was the night that we were staying after we traveled for a Spartan race, and it was one of those beasts where it's like 13 miles and 52 obstacles. And yeah, it was rough. I remember thinking, like, I can feel every single part of my body right now. Like, there's sensation everywhere. It's all sore, but I can feel every single part. And like that, like that for me was like, hey, here's evidence that you're alive, and when you're sitting in your cubicle, I have no evidence that I'm actually alive.
I've done some half marathons and trained for a marathon, and people are like, why would you do that? And I'm like, because I want to see what I can do. I want to push myself to see what I can actually accomplish. Or when my kids were little, like talking about defensive stuff, I got worried for a period of time where I was worried that, like, if we have all these things that happen in our country now, or shootings and things like that. And I wanted to be able to pick up all three of my kids because they were all little and move with them because they couldn't keep up with me. So a friend of mine, she's just as crazy as I am, we would get in the backyard and we would pick up all our kids and we would see how far we could run and sprint with all of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, and it was like, okay, I don't want to be the first time I ever have to do this to be the first time I ever had to do it. So I'm going to practice what this feels like, how much I can maneuver and shift and move with like 3 kids. And then my kids knew what it was like to be attached to me and hang on for dear life. So, yeah, I'm crazy.
That's great. At what point did you stop doing that? Probably when they hit teenage life,
more
right?
Than 50 pounds. So like, it's like me dragging a dummy now. And I found out just how bad I am at that with the task force stagger match.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw some footage of that. You had to drag a dummy from a box to a box, and then you started shooting. How much was that dummy? How much did it weigh?
It was a 200-pound dummy.
Dang.
Yeah, so I'm like, a whole $125, and I'm trying to like fire this thing up. Once you got it started, it was fine. Now it was in a box, so a couple of our shooters, it would get a little hung on the box too.
Yeah.
So you're trying to pull against it getting hung. But it's not easy to drag 200 pounds if you're not used to dragging. Now you could see the military guys that do it on a regular basis, like. You could see it was much easier for them.
Yeah, you can almost pick out like the guys that were football players. Watching all the videos on Facebook.
I noticed how they plowed through, right?
Yeah, I noticed it most in Dylan Easley because he played a bunch of high school ball and stuff like that. He always tells me, so he must always relive it. But
I'm not actually. I know for I don't know if it was true for the whole match, but I'm pretty sure for most of the match he had like the number 1 slot for that thing because he just blasted through that whole stage just like a football player.
Yeah, he's a tank.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right, well, Tina, I want to go back to something that you talked about earlier. You said that you were a field scientist, so you sought out firearms training because you were off in the woods by yourself. So what exactly did you do as a field scientist? So
I did kind of a lot of things in science. I started out actually in the lab part of it doing molecular evolution. So using DNA to understand relationships between different species of animals and plants. And that's so my degree is in botany. And then I worked in several different labs over the years. And so that's where I started out. And then I went into ecology, and mostly on the plant side, and understanding how plants mostly are related by fire in the southeastern United States, because we have natural burns that go through, and a lot of those plants and animals are actually rely on that fire to go through so that they can, some of them require, if you look up my name, not that I'm telling you to do this, but there's a plant called Aristida stricta, which is called wiregrass, and it's a fire-dependent species. It doesn't bloom unless it's actually burned at a certain time of year, and I wrote a monograph on that plant. So started doing that. I was a wetland biologist for the state of Florida, so I identified wetlands and wetland lines, and then I taught a lot of the agencies in Florida how to do that. And then when I moved around the country, I kind of took on different jobs in different places. Like in Texas, I worked for the Wildlife Research Institute in Kingsville, Texas. Here in North Carolina, I did micro heart surgeries on mice.
What?
Yeah. You're looking at how nanoparticles are intaked into the heart, and when you have an ischemia, which is a mild heart attack. So we would actually have to open a mouse up and perform a mild ischemia event on it. Inject it with nanoparticles, and then keep that mouse alive during a couple-hour process to see how it works. So I've done a lot of really cool things in science over the years.
So you actually induced the heart attack in the mice? You didn't just find the old decrepit ones who lived a hard lifestyle?
No. These were your typical lab-grown mice, and you actually tied off a tiny little artery on the heart, which you can imagine how tiny a mouse heart is. It's about as big as your pinky nail.
Oh wow!
So you're doing small, tiny manipulations, and you're using a thread, and you're essentially tying off that area of the heart, and so it doesn't get blood flow.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they had to, we give little tiny trach and everything on these little tiny
Oh,
mice.
no kidding.
Yeah, it's pretty tedious.
Oh man, my imagination's going wild. I kind of want to see a photo of like what that looks like with.
Honestly, I don't think I have any photographs of it. I was so on what I had to do.
All right. Well, if you ever come across one, I totally want to check it out.
Okie dokie.
Well, does your background in, well, before we get to that, what was your like favorite area? So you're you're an ecologist. Different areas of the United States are completely different. It's almost like a different planet, right? When you go to like
it really is,
the Southwest United States, where SUPS is, it looks 100% different than like West Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what was your favorite area to work in?
God, that's hard. I think probably my favoriteest place I've ever been in the U.S. is, and I would, but people may not even realize that it's even there, is in Northern California. There's an area that has some really amazing carnivorous plants. It's north of the and there's some different types of carnivorous plants that grow in that area. Mm-hmm. And I can give you a bunch of scientific names and you'd be like, huh? But it's extremely lush and beautiful, but there are like rock faces where there's all this kind of really cool moss that's growing down there because the water is seeping out of the rocks and dripping down. And I do have photographs of this. And then there's all these pinguiculas, which are these butterworts. They're kind of a type of carnivorous plant that the bug gets on the leaf and it slowly rolls up. There's sundews that it hits on the dapodru and the little leaves roll up. But there are all these extremely adaptive plants that grow in this area. And there's also an area in the southeastern United States that has Venus flytraps and things like that. They're very, very similar. But those two places in the U.S. are probably my two favorite places because the plants are so adapted to this lifestyle.
Yeah, plants are super interesting. How they react to stimuli and everything, and carnivorous plants are just like blow my freaking mind.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're very, very cool.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, so okay. What I was going to ask is your science background. Is that useful to you in the shooting sports?
I would definitely have to say it is. And I think because I'm kind of already in this mindset of trying to understand and figure things out around me. So I typically will problem solve in the same fashion that I did when I was in a lab. I couldn't get something to work. I'd slowly, like one piece at a time, figure out why it works. But then where else I'm starting to really see it kind of come out is on the precision rifle side, is the ballistics, understanding ballistics and how this projectile is different than that projectile, how a slight shift in velocity, that standard deviation in velocity that you get off your chronograph, how much does that affect the movement of that projectile over long distances. So I get really, really into the weeds, what people would say, in the data, and I get excited about data. I mean, literally this morning at the range, I was zeroing my RPR, my Ruger Precision, with one round, but I don't know if I have enough rounds. So then I was taking another round and seeing what the offset was, and so I was doing calculations to figure out how much of an offset I would have with this round if I needed to shoot it. And just like happy as a lark about it. I'm like, like having a good old time. And I'm sure some people would be like, oh my God. So I like the numbers, and then I like to be able to take those numbers and see it visually, and then being able to, and then figure out a way that I can take that information and be able to teach others it. And that's kind of part of that teaching aspect, is I like to be able to share in my enthusiasm, but not show how smart I am, but show them, kind of give them the passageway of seeing it, and they may not use it or anything like that, but it's neat to see light bulbs go on when they actually understand something, when they thought that they weren't capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Interesting. So you mentioned precision. So have you made so you're dipping in the water of transition, you're shooting PRS matches. Is that because of the math? That part of it appeals to you, or is it just a new challenge now?
I think it's a new challenge. I think that the first time this was a couple years ago, I shot a target out at 1,000 yards. I was like, oh, wow, I can now reach people 1,000 yards. Like, it was this it's like I can reach out and touch out here. So I think the competitive side of me, that is very intriguing. Like, I definitely have, you talk about your goals list. I have on my goals list, I want to be able to do that mile shot.
Oh.
Yeah, I want to accomplish that goal. It's on the shooting bucket list.
Nice.
Because then it goes back to that my bag of tools and my skill set. So if I'm capable, I have the ability to do that, then for me that makes me feel capable. And that's my own little inner part of me that's probably crazy, is I like to feel capable. Mm-hmm. And these different kinds of challenges kind of help me with that.
I like that. So let's talk about that mile shot goal. Like, what does it take to shoot a mile? Like, I honestly have no sort of frame of reference for anything. So dumb it down for me. I'm not sure that I can do it with the rifle that I currently have now. So it's probably, I'm going to have to either borrow somebody else's or end up putting more money into what I already do. But yeah, it takes it's going to take a little bit more planning. The amount of travel in your scope is going to be an important element. If you don't have a scope that has enough travel, then instead of being able to set your dial to set your dope into the turrets and then just use the crosshairs, you'd have to hold over with crosshairs and stuff, which I particularly don't like doing. I like that just use my crosshair and the dope's already set in place. So there's a lot, and I'm kind of, it was a goal that I've recently realized. So now I'm like, okay, what do I got to do? So I'm really kind of just learning what I'm going to have to do to make that shot, and where I can even go to make that shot. Right.
There's not a lot of places you can do that.
Yeah, I'm sure. So let's walk us through that process then. Like, what is going to be like the next steps? Obviously finding a place to do it. How do you evaluate your gear to make sure it's worthy, etc.?
I'm going to have to reach out to that community that does it on a very regular basis. That's my initial thing. And I kind of I'm trying to get through essentially the next 2 months of matches and things like that. And then that's kind of on my list, is I've got to reach out to the community. There's a community that's kind of the mile community. And start and get into those forums and see what they're using, and kind of start exploring it, just like it would do for any new competition that you would go into. You start exploring what gear they use, how they're training for it, and all that other stuff. So I'm in the very beginning stages of that part right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm seeing a pattern in what you're doing here, and it kind of reminds me of your background in science. Basically, you're going out in the field and then you take all that observations and data and submit a report. Am I kind of close there?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm constantly collecting data.
Yeah, and that's what you're... To
give you an example of data collection for me, we can kind of bounce back to shotgun. Shotgun was hard for me. Managing recoil was hard for me. So I had the idea of what if I use a pistol grip? I'll be able to hold it in closer to me, and the length of pull will be shorter because I don't exactly have very long arms. So I have a little trouble with length of pull with shotguns. So when I had a lot of people who told me, oh, you don't use pistol grip, that doesn't work for 3-gun, it affects your loading. But I remember seeing a few, some people on the Pro Series a few years back that used pistol grip. And I'm like, well, it can't be all that bad. They're on a Pro Series and they're using it.
Yeah, so, John McClane did.
Yeah, John McClane. So I looked up his videos, and I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing here. I ordered one for I had a Versamax at the time. I ordered a Mesa Tactical from one, and I fitted it, and I went out and I tested it, and it really worked well for me for quite some time. I was able to manage the recoil of the gun better. I strong hand load, so it really did, the pistol grip didn't get in the way. But what it taught me was actually how to handle a shotgun. And now I've moved back to just using a standard buttstock that you'd have on a shotgun. But I had to take that journey of collecting data myself. And that's kind of how I am about stuff. I need to kind of go out there and explore it, see what I think of it, develop my observations from it, and then I can, somebody else asks me about it, I have an educated reason of why I've done it. Not because this person, that person does it, but because I've tried it out and this is what I've learned. And that's kind of how I go about things in general. I want to I don't like black boxing things. I want the actual information inside the box. So.
Nice. Well, I like that style because one of the things that I hate about things in life is, like, one, that's the way we've always done it. And then, two, because so-and-so said it, and then this is just how we're going to do it. It's like, Come on. Like, we can't practice new things and try new methods and stuff. So
I had, and this was probably the most valuable information I learned many, many years ago. I had a fellow scientist, well, he was a professor I worked for, and he told me that none of the Nobel Prize winners were guys that were older, who had been doing it for a while. All Nobel Prize winners, when they actually do the thing that they win their Nobel Prize for, they're young and dumb, and they ask questions and don't listen. So they go out there and they're like, well, let me see if it works. And that's how they make these new discoveries. Mm-hmm. That's kind of stuck with me for a long time about things, because my kids are like, hey, Mom, what do you think about this? You think it'll work? I'm like, well, let's sit down and try. Let's see if it will work, instead of just telling them, I don't think so. They're not doing anything dangerous, so it's like, let's see what we can do with these paper and scissors. So, it's made, at least for me, I have 3 kids that are very creative minded. They're not afraid to try something or to see how something works, which I think is a good skill to have as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so you've turned this trying, this testing, and this data accumulation into training as well. So you go out and you train students. You have mm-hmm. Courses and classes that you hold. What is the overall theme of Shield Maiden Defense, which is your training organization?
So, you can read the bio. It says that it was born out of an absence of having qualified female instructors. And when I first started many years ago, there wasn't really many female instructors out there that taught gun handling and instruction. And so, there was a lot of struggles that I went through in the beginning with just the size of my hand and grip. That made me realize, okay, there's got to be a better way at doing this than the typical male instruction, which was telling me, just grip it harder or you'll figure it out. And I was like, oh, all right, I'm a tough chick. I can really handle a lot, but this still ain't working. This Glock is beating the heck out of my knuckle. And because of the back end of a Glock, because I had just one knot that hadn't had a reduced grip, it really hurt that knuckle joint. And so I took that and I'm like, okay, let's figure out a better way of doing this. And so when it has to like gun handling and recoil management, I'm thinking about from a physics perspective. And so my students, I teach them actually what's the physics behind the gun. And when it's doing this is why you need to do this. So just the area of least resistance, the gun's going to move, these kind of standard physics principles. And because I'm not telling them, hey, do this because I told you so, I'm actually giving them a solid reason why. They take on the information that much easier. I think people they want to know why, but they don't always know what questions to ask to get those answers. So I'm giving them that ahead of time. So it eases their brain just to take in the information. And so, that's kind of a cool thing, because then all of a sudden you see these little light bulbs turning on with lady shooters who thought that they couldn't manage a bigger size gun, or they don't understand why this little gun hurts so much worse than this big gun does, because their instinct was, oh, I'll buy the little one because it's cute and it won't hurt.
It's like, pink.
Yeah, it's pink. But so that's kind of the premise in which I teach. I don't want to teach anything that I don't feel comfortable teaching and that I have a good understanding of. But when I do have it, then it's very fulfilling for me to be able to do that, to give that information. Just like with the course that we talked about for Fall Fest this last year, the Know Your Dope course for 3-gunners. Often ladies don't realize what they could be doing, some easy things with their ammo and their reticle that they could be doing that would help their 3-gun game. And the number of light bulbs that went off in that class, I mean, we could have probably charged the town, because it literally, they were just like, oh, I had no idea. I didn't know it was, I mean, I heard that constantly.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, that's empowering for me to be able to give that kind of skill. So
I see that a lot in not just lady shooters, but everyone that's a newer shooter. They feel like, I'm looking through my scope, I see these crosshairs. Every single Mel Gibson or Bruce Willis movie I've ever seen has crosshairs on target, pull trigger, and that's where the impact is. So
yeah, and they're like, I don't understand why I'm not hitting my target at 300 yards, and I'm like, wait.
Exactly. So let's provide the audience with a little bit of value, some takeaways here. So what are some things that you taught in that class that you can give, like maybe some super tips to the audience here?
So the super tip is, you got your box of ammo and it has a actual velocity feet per second on the side of it. That's a good starting point, but depending on the length of your barrel, the actual material that the barrel is made up of, the gas system that you have on your gun, those are going to change that velocity, and it can change that velocity by up to at least 200 feet per second difference. And that 200 feet per second can make a huge shift in your impact with just, if you're using a BDC reticle. So the first thing that all those ladies that we did in their class was we chronographed all the ammo that they typically use for the match. I put a chronograph on the end of it, a magneto speed, and we chronoed it, and we looked at what their box told them that the velocity was and what the actual velocity was. And that was the first light bulb for all of them. And then the next tip was taking their BDC, because that's mostly what us use. And there's these little numbers that are on it that's in the instruction packet.
Yeah.
And I know it seems obvious, but so you can enter your data in Straylock or whichever. There's lots of different ballistic apps that are out there that are pretty straightforward. You entered that chronograph information and the temperatures that you zeroed your rifle at, and then you can take those, whether it's probably MOA if it's a BDC, except for a few brands, but you take, if it says that it's at the second hash mark is at 2.4 MOA, well, you type that in there and you actually figure out what the yardage is on that line, because the brands tell us that it's 100, 200, 300, and 400, but in reality, they never line up that beautifully, depending on if you're using 77 grain, 69 grain, 55 grain, whatever.
Yeah, it's very much different, and for me and anyone that will accept my advice before they actually buy a scope, I try to steer people away from BDC reticles just for that reason.
I really wish that, and this goes out to all manufacturers, I really wish that they would just do a standard mil gradiated reticle in these 1-6s and 1-8s. Have that as an option. I think, or even if you do MOA or mil, I think that's a way more useful tool than a BDC.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. So what do you prefer? Do you buy your scopes with MOA or mil reticles?
It's kind of, for a long time I did MOA because it's easier to learn, especially new shooters, because just how the units are divisible. But anymore, I use a mil reticle for my precision stuff because I don't have to do as many turns on the turret.
Right.
But I don't really have a preference for one or the other. I just know whatever my units are and I go with it. So I know some of the military have more of it because they're used to using one or the other. I think that science-minded is me. I know that what my numbers are depending on which one I'm using, and I just do a conversion. It's just kind of like I've always remembered that there's 2.5 centimeters in an inch. It's just like there's so many mils in this and there's so many moas in this. So everything's just units for me.
Nice. And do you do all that math in your head, or do you carry around like a dope book or dope card or anything?
I have some of it is in my head because I use it enough to consistently, but I always have back check. I have something that I can, just in case I'm having a foggy moment. The 40s have not been nice to my brain.
All right, so we have velocity. We have figuring out what the scope means. What are some other takeaways that you saw? Some light bulb moments from the class you taught at a girl and a gun.
I think people underestimate how much they should be practicing positional work, even in 3-gun and then precision rifle. Just getting on a barricade and going out and being able to shoot off of an unsteady target. I think we go to the range, we zero guns, in this beautifully nice stationary moment, and then we can't figure out why we can't hit the 300 and 400 yard targets at off of some weird truck bed or something like that in some weird angle. But because they forget that parallax and all these other things play into it. So I think that the other thing that they kind of realized, because we had a barricade for them to kind of get in uncomfortably, because we're all in different shapes and sizes. So they got to go shoot out to 300 to 500 yards off of this barricade, and it was humbling for some of them. They realized where they needed some work at. And honestly, you don't even have to live fire. If you've got a chair in your kitchen, and you can kind of get in and out of that chair, you get comfortable with a reticle moving through the target and pressing this trigger without disturbing the movement too much and getting that comfort level.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that you do. I've seen your Instagram posts of you lying on the kitchen table and dry firing with your precision rifle.
Yeah, and I will tell everybody, because I get all these messages like, your poor neighbors. My back window goes out to a big giant forest. I'm not pointing at anybody's neighbors' houses, I promise.
Yeah.
I actually have little tiny orange dots on my back fence in different sizes and shapes that I'm using to kind of hone in on and practice trigger press.
Awesome. So. I like that. But yeah, the safety police are all over the internet, aren't they?
Oh, yes. Everybody's judging.
Yeah, no kidding. One of the other things I noticed, you were talking about parallax and awkward positions, is most people, or maybe not most, many people will, especially newer folks, they will zero their rifle at a range, right? And generally a range is going to have like some sort of concrete or wood table with a stool, and so you're going to do it seated. And right. I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time I sat at a nice bench and shot in a 3-gun match with my rifle.
I don't think I've ever shot. Like, I honestly, if you're going to zero your rifle, if you're going to do it in a position, why don't you do it in prone? Because we do use prone quite often. I think prone's a lot steadier. For a long time, I didn't do prone because I had some back issues. So, actually a disc issue that luckily this last 6 months I've finally been able to work out and can bend my back properly again. But if you're going to zero it at the range, just zero it in prone, because that's at least the position you're going to do. And zeroing in prone, there's a little bit of a difference than zeroing off a table too. But yeah, they really need to practice those positions. And like I said, you don't have to use ammo if you don't have the cash to do it. So
sure. Well, we've been talking about a class that you taught last year at Fall Fest. Do you have any classes coming up that you're going to be doing?
Well, I'll be teaching that same class at Fall Fest again this year, along with a competition pistol course. We're having at a Girl No Guns Fall Fest multi-gun match. We're going to have a a series of instructions called 3-Gun U, and that's one of the courses that'll be offered with some other courses with shotgun and rifle. And in addition to that, I do private lessons. If you're in the North Carolina area, you can contact me, and I can do private lessons with pistol, rifle, or shotgun. And I also do concealed carry courses. And then I've been doing a modern survival course and a bushcraft course for a Girl in the Guns National Conference for the last couple years. And now I've opened that up to traveling to different places in the U.S. and teaching a weekend bushcraft and survival course. And all those courses are going to be offered on my website, shieldmaidendefense.com.
Oh, very cool. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes if you can't remember that. So the Fall Fest, the 3-Gun U, so I got to check out the classes that were taught last year and observe a little bit. Unfortunately, I didn't get to take them because I'm a dude, but
you should put a thing on.
yeah, get a pink tank top and go sneak in.
Oh, yikes.
But the ladies that I spoke with that took the class, and that actually is how we initially got to talking, was one of the young ladies that was in the class was raving about it, and I was like, I need to go talk to Tina about this. But it sounds like there's a ton of value that can be taken away from those classes. So if you're going to a Girl in a Gun Fall Fest, definitely check those out. And bushcraft. So bushcraft, what are you teaching your bushcraft classes?
So it's a basic bushcraft course. A lot of it is essentially like if you were out on a day hike or camping or something along those lines, and you got stuck out in the woods, would you be able to build a fire, build an improvised shelter, and be able to get some clean water? Because those are kind of the essentials that you'll need to get through either a night or a couple days to take care of yourself. I don't worry so much about food because we can go a lot longer without food, but we sure can't go long without water, heat, and shelter.
Right.
And so, like we did a quick course at National Conference, which really focused mainly on building fire. And, anybody can build a fire with a match or a lighter. And I can teach you how to build a fire with 2 sticks, but it's going to take longer than a few hours because it's going to be challenging. So with that course, I taught them how to build fires with flint and steel. And then some other, if you use a battery and some steel wool, those kind of techniques. But the flint and steel is something that you can easily have in your car or in a pack that's small, along with a little bit of laundry lint, and it can go a long way. And I had 15 ladies in each one of those courses, so 30 ladies I got to observe. I taught them the techniques, and they sat down in groups of 4, and I had heard so much giggling and excitement that I wish I could have recorded it, because they were so excited to do something to gain a skill that they've never had before, that with proper technique they could all perform. And so initially they learned how to do it with some dryer lint, because that's nice and nice and easy. And then I said, okay, girls, now I need you to scavenge around and find natural things that you think will light on fire. And it went from we were in Texas, South Texas, so they had cow patties. They had all sorts of some live moss, some dead moss. They tried all that, and they worked for a solid hour trying to see how easily these different natural elements would light, and they realized that it's not as easy as you think.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so it was just I still have a smile from ear to ear of all their expressions, and they've taken that. I've gotten these girls now that they have once a week. One of them has a date night with her husband, and they learned a different bushcraft skill. I've gotten them onto some different knot tying, how to build certain types of shelters. So some of them, we did a little bit of shelter building in the class. And so now they've gone out with their kids and they've started to build shelters with their children on the weekend. So it's growing them in a whole bunch of different ways, just not in that one skill, which makes me happy.
That's exciting.
Very.
I might not be the best bushcrafter out there, though, because a cow patty would be the last thing that I picked up to see if I could light on fire.
I mean, different types of manure can light on fire pretty easily. But I was like, wow, these girls are not, I mean, they were not afraid. I need to put some photographs up because they were in it and full and then when one of them would get something on fire, the excitement of the whole group just cheering each other on, it's pretty amazing. I've got to say, like, I teach mostly women, so that's my perspective, but we in this day and age and culture and empowerment and stuff like that, to me, that's empowerment. Like, these women took a skill and they've learned how to use it. Like, they've become more capable in that way. And not that they need to go out and take over the world or anything, but at least they have a cool skill. If they needed to protect themselves or their family, they would have that skill set.
Yeah. From an outsider perspective of, a Girl in a Gun Fall Fest, that's one of the things that I took away from it is it's not the typical, backstabbing and sniping kind of thing that is the quote unquote empowerment culture you see a lot portrayed in the media. It's very encouraging to where, someone would get done shooting and their entire squad's like clapping and cheering for them and they're high-fiving. And
the whole organization is really built off of that kind of mantra. Like, we want everybody to be successful, but also know that there's hurdles to do that, but that there's somebody there who's got your back to help you through those hurdles if you need to. And women we think a lot differently than our male counterpart. I think this is kind of where the biology starts playing in. Biologically, we're a much more social group.
Yes.
And we work together in small teams. I mean, whether you're raising children or doing certain types of activities, it's just kind of, we work really well that way. So for a Girl in a Gun, it's captured that kind of way of thinking and applied it to the shooting community. So it's a great group of women, and it takes women who've never even, I have my chapter and I have women on a regular basis who have never even handled a gun at all. And, by the end of their 2 hours, they're shooting and having fun and giggling about it. So,
yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah. And I really enjoy seeing that, too. And it's, the culture seems to be like not one of, excelling your growth by knocking someone else down. It's by bringing everyone else up. And I really like that attitude.
Yep. Raising the masses. Yep.
Heck
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Tina, we're coming up on the end of our time here, but I want to ask you a few last questions. First of all, I want to know what's next for you.
Oh.
And that's pretty open-ended, but you can take that in the teaching world, in the competition shooting world, wherever you want to take it.
Well, I'm really right now I'm working on trying to grow myself as an instructor. So that's really where I'm hoping the next 6 months I actually have a good training program in play. As a competitor, I honestly see myself improve each day that I'm out there. And so that makes me happy. And I really hope that I can, a lot of people tell me that no matter how my match goes, no matter what, I always have a smile on my face, and I hope that continues because I think that's a good trait for me. But I hope that I'm able to attain some of these goals that I have on a piece of paper, and if not, then I'm just going to figure out a better way to train harder and make those goals happen in the future.
Nice. So. I love that attitude. Where did the nickname Sparky come from?
Well, we can blame Garrett Dietrich for that name.
Oh, really?
Yes. I shoot with the Dietrich family on a pretty regular basis. Cindy and I are kind of best shooting buddies.
She's a wonderful person.
God, she is. She's like, I love her in so many different ways. She's been tremendous help in my personal life and in my shooting life.
That's great.
She, I shot with him for a couple years now, and I can't quite remember exactly, but Garrick decided one day that he's like, you're kind of Sparky, aren't you? Just Sparky. And he just kept saying it, and after a while, asked him, I'm like, should I just call myself Sparky? And he's like, yeah. He's like, and so he's like, yeah, Tina Martin, aka Sparky. So it was just like, all right, buddy, I'm going to do that just for you. So, and he has the book of Sparky, as he says, because we'll talk about like, my eclectic background and different places I've gone and traveled and done. And he'll like kind of pretend he's like, well, I'm going to open up to page 100 in the book of Sparky. Make some sort of joke and stuff. So yeah, he's the one who gave me the name. It's, I can be a bit sassy and sarcastic at times. And so I think it kind of boiled out of that. So
I like it.
Yeah.
Where do you see the sport of three-gun headed?
I think that we're actually falling back into more of the roots of three-gun. I think there's a movement back to outlaw matches. I think, we kind of, they started in outlaw and they moved to like more bay, fast style shooting. And then there's been some, change and shift. And then I think there's a realization that not everybody can easily hop into three guns. So we need to start offering single style gun matches back to just captivate individuals in that side of competition and bring them in that way. So I think we're going to have a lot more outlaw style stuff rising up again. I think people are wanting that challenge again. So at least that's what I see. That could be just my perspective.
All right. Well, so we've been a lot of different places here, Tina, with your background, your education, your training, and how you provide how you relate all that together with your shooting. If you can leave the audience with one final thought or piece of advice, what would it be?
Never quit. Like, just keep going, keep trying to figure it out, and ask the community, the shooting community, for help. We're all out here to help. I tell people all the time, if you have a question and you can't figure out the answer, reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you. And if I can't help you, I'll find us somebody who can.
I love it. That's a great final thought and a good way to end the show. Tina, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with the Three Gun Show audience. This has been a ton of fun.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Hey, before you take off, be sure to check out the show notes at threegunshow.com for links to things that we discussed in the podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Armalite, the original. Armalite rifles put the AR in AR-15. The rifles themselves come with 1-8 twist barrels, match barrels, 18-inch or 13.5-inch with a 15-inch or 12.5-inch handguard, Timney trigger, Luth AR stock, adjustable gas system, tunable comp, a patented tunable comp. This thing's ready to go right out of the box for a three gun with no additional modifications other than putting on a nice optic. I myself use a Vortex Viper PST 1-6 when I'm shooting TAC Ops or their Spitfire when I'm shooting limited. Check them out at armalite.com. Quick reminder that if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcast content, so you will always get the very latest. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll see you on the range.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.